We established earlier this year that the Nintendo Switch 2 is a massive success. It is phenomenally successful. It has a number of high quality exclusive games, more than PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X has gotten in their entire lifetime. We've seen situations like Mario Kart World explode into irrelevancy. We've seen games like the Duskbloods getting confirmed after years of being told that Elden Ring was bigger and better than every single Nintendo game ever produced. We've been told that like Nintendo Switch was failing and that it wasn't successful and that nobody cared about it and that it would never be successful. And in reality, it was a giant cope. And we've talked about how this was a giant cope for over a year, honestly. And now it's time to move on from that. Like Nintendo Switch is a success. And not only is it a success, it is clearly the winner of the next unannounced console generation. PS6 and Xbox, what are they calling it? Like the Helix? Yeah, the Helix. The Xbox Helix are coming out late. They're coming out expensive. They're launching with no games. By the time that these things get announced, Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be in the absolute prime of its life. It's going to have big, new, exciting games. It's going to have probably several more Nintendo Directs. It's probably going to have a ton of 10 out of 10 titles on the market. It already has those, but like the simple fact of the matter is Nintendo Switch 2 is the anti-Dreamcast, in which it was this extremely powerful console that launched early in the console space, became hugely successful, and the competition simply can't catch up to where it is. Right now, the industry delusionally believes that Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to carry PlayStation 5 and Series X into relevancy, that the remastered version of Grand Theft Auto 6 day one on PS6 and the Xbox Helix is going to somehow salvage the brand, and that there's going to be some huge, big AAA deals uh, on these new consoles day one. And that simply isn't going to happen. The best you're going to get is remastered versions of old games. It took 8 years for us to get Pragmata, a game that was originally supposed to be like the PS5's like big killer original IP. And not only did that game come out late, not only did that game come out poorly, not only was that game has that game already been forgotten, it also launched on Nintendo Switch 2. And I do think this is going to be like the crippling thing that really kills Xbox and PlayStation, in that increasingly these third-party games are finding success on Nintendo platforms. This is not the N64 era. We are not dealing with like hardware constraints. We aren't dealing with like a corrupt gaming press. We're not dealing with like this weird misrepresentation, this idea that Nintendo only makes consoles for little children. Okay. We've grown past that mindset a long time ago. And as a result of that, you can see third party games like Pragmata, like Indiana Jones, like, any of these other games that are coming out, Tales of Arise. You can see how they're doing reasonably good numbers on Nintendo Switch 2. Which, by the way, flies completely in the face of the narrative last year that third-party games were failing on Switch 2, which simply isn't happening. The only reason that anybody cared about Xbox or PlayStation back in the day was due to the idea that the third-party games were higher quality, they were more realistic, they had online gameplay. They were doing things that Nintendo weren't doing at the time. But that was 20 years ago, okay? The days of Xbox 360 being the only viable online service are long over. Like people still don't seem to want to accept that Nintendo Switch Online is by far the best online service right now. With the free games, with the online play, like there really is fundamentally no difference between Nintendo Switch Online and Xbox Live. But people still have this mindset that Nintendo is somehow going to fall up short, that it's not going to be as good, that it's not competitive. And the simple fact of the matter is that that isn't true. Like the simple fact of the matter is that the competition isn't doing a whole lot. Nintendo made a very smart decision in like building a wide variety of games, a wide catalog of different franchises. They expanded outside of like the typical generic AAA slop. And as a result of that, the generic AAA slop has just kind of burnt out to nothing, to the point where people are seeing straight up like remasters of beloved games like Assassin's Creed 4 get lambasted, simply because people are starting to realize that Assassin's Creed 4 was never good to begin with. This is not an isolated incident. Like every single IP we've seen like propped up over the past 25 years, whether it's Halo, whether it's like GTA, whether it's like I don't know, God of War, like what we've seen over the past like 20 years is that like all these franchises have died a death. Okay, they've made radical changes. They've alienated their core audience. They've lost their core user base. They've lost a lot of their initial developers. They have not been able to retain their relevancy the way Nintendo has. It's so interesting seeing people trying to argue that like something like say Star Fox has lost relevancy, or that Xenoblade stopped being good after a certain point, or that Fire Emblem fell off, or that like 2D Mario isn't good anymore, or that The Legend of Zelda has fallen off, or that like Metroid Prime 4 wasn't good. It's so interesting to hear people speculate on this idea, that Metroid Prime might not get a new entry because of the reception to Metroid Prime 4, when first of all, we've already gotten confirmation that we will be getting new games after this. And second of all, we've seen other developers go longer without producing games in their series. You certainly don't see anybody speculate that we'll never see The Elder Scrolls 6, which has, we haven't seen Skyrim since 2011. We haven't seen anybody speculate about Grand Theft Auto 6. We haven't seen anybody like speculate on, Uncharted hasn't gotten a new entry in a decade. You still see people glaze Uncharted. Okay, we got a new Star Fox before we got a new Uncharted. You don't see anybody talking about The Last of Us and how that can never come back, and how the HBO show failed, and how it got mogged by the Mario movie and other video game adaptations. Right, the entire narrative we were told that PlayStation was like the mature, sophisticated, high quality video game console for adults, it's completely collapsed. And what we're seeing in is real time in what that means, in which you still see people delusionally saying that Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be this like blockbuster release. It's going to be the biggest entertainment product ever. It's going to be the highest grossing game ever made. I'm seeing people trying to say like it's going to outsell Minecraft, which is simply not possible. Like considering the user base. Like I imagine you could release that thing on like every platform imaginable and like not even come close to scratching like even GTA 5's numbers, because GTA 5 was popular. Like it didn't do those numbers day one, is the thing that these people don't understand. Like the reason GTA 5 is grossing so much money is because they haven't put out another one, and they keep re-releasing it on every console. It's pulling in all this money due to microtransactions, and it's still grossing nowhere near as much as Pokemon. Grand Theft Auto 6 could be the highest selling game ever, and yet you're not going to see it become as successful as Pokemon. It's not really possible for that to happen. And considering that Pokemon is only one Nintendo IP, and considering how it keeps breaking record after record after record, and honestly keeps selling just as much as GTA has been, Scarlet and Violet. Scarlet Violet have been selling consistently since they launched, and Sword and Shield have kept selling even years after they released. Like what we're seeing is that Nintendo has so many different franchises, so many different series that are all healthy, all have dedicated teams, all have like great producers behind them who are like putting out like great stuff all the time, while PlayStation fans have waited like 13 years for Grand Theft Auto 6. Like Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to sell like 100 million units, and that's simply not going to be good enough. Like that's just the reality behind this release, is that this game is going to sell 100 million units, and what's going to happen? The Switch 2 is already well established. It's already successful. It already has Mario Kart World, which, by the way, is probably going to outsell Grand Theft Auto at some point. Uh, you're gonna see you're gonna see like Nintendo just continue dominating with the Switch 2 before and after Grand Theft Auto 6 is launched. And although Grand Theft Auto 6 will still print money for Rockstar, it's not gonna be anywhere near the level of caliber that the industry needs to keep like PlayStation and Xbox relevant. Like Grand Theft Auto 6 is essentially life support for PlayStation and Xbox. So what's going to happen going forward is that Grand Theft Auto 7 is going to take even longer to come out. You're going to stick with Grand Theft Auto 6 longer than you stuck with Grand Theft Auto 5. You're going to see Grand Theft Auto 5 and 6 ported to Nintendo consoles while you wait for Grand Theft Auto 7. You're going to wait for years for the next Grand Theft Auto game while Xbox and PlayStation just withers away as Nintendo just continues to dominate and continues to like escalate and continues to like establish a monopoly on this corrupt, toxic industry. I've long referred to Grand Theft Auto 6 as the last stand of the third party industry in general, because the industry generally thought that Grand Theft Auto 6 would be able to normalize $100 games. They would be able to be a massive shot in the arm of the industry. They thought it would be able to sell consoles, and they thought they would be able to eat the scraps that would fall from Rockstar's table. But as we're seeing more and more often is that people would rather like play GTA more than play any of these generic uninspired like third party games. Like the thing that's majorly changed over the past 20 years is that people just aren't invested in the random games that come out on PlayStation and Xbox. We see consistently that games like Soros or Mixtape completely flop. Games like Returnal, Borderlands 4, like these are supposed to be big deals. These are supposed to be like, console sellers. These are supposed to be like the big critically acclaimed darlings of the year, and yet consistently they keep getting mogged by random Nintendo games. Meanwhile, on Nintendo consoles, we see games like Pokapia and Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, games that nobody had any faith in at all, do extraordinarily well. Like we're at the point where the industry has moved past this like edgelord, super realistic phase and are more concerned about like having high quality experiences. Like we're beginning to see that there is indeed a market for games like Yoshi, games like Pokapia, games like Tamagotchi Life, games like Star Fox, games like Rhythm Heaven Groove, games like Splatoon Raiders. Like we were told, 10 years ago that Nintendo IPs wouldn't be enough to carry a video game console. And what we're seeing instead is that this has led Nintendo to dominating the entire gaming industry. These days, anti-Nintendo discourse is basically like weirdos like Fratanga or Nintendine trying to tell you that emulation on PC is somehow gonna like ruin Nintendo's business, or it's them somehow pretending that Power World is a viable like indie game brand that has a bright future ahead of it. And like that's just very observably not true once you peel back the curtain even a little bit. Okay. Like it's kind of remarkable how like all of the anti-Nintendo copes this console generation have kind of been shot in the cradle. They've been straight up aborted. We have seen excuse after excuse after excuse being brought up about how the Switch 2 is doomed to fail, and the simple reality is that it's succeeding. Even like that long anticipated price hike doesn't seem to be like slowing down the console's success at all. In fact, it seems to be hitting right when the console is going to be hitting its stride in September. So, why exactly do we have to pretend to believe that these people know what they're talking about? It was only a couple of weeks ago that we were seeing people like still continue to pretend that like Nintendo Switch's stock was down, that the investors were pissed, and that Nintendo would like go bankrupt because of the investors that don't control the company. It's like it's just completely insane and really does need to get called out. I think by the time the next Nintendo Direct is revealed, or even before then. I think this has been like, a thing since the Star Fox Direct. It feels like the entire mindset that people had that this thing didn't have any games, that it wasn't going to appeal to anyone, that it wasn't going to sell. It's all completely fallen apart. And I just don't know how they're going to cope going forward, because when the Switch 2 survives Grand Theft Auto 6 and continues to grow and oh, by the way, that's assuming that Grand Theft Auto 6 isn't coming out on Switch 2. Like, that's definitely something that, like, a lot of these people haven't considered, is that Grand Theft Auto 6 could indeed be launching day and date on Switch 2. And if that happens, the entire cope that, like, Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to destroy Nintendo just completely falls by the wayside. But yeah, I am operating off the idea that that's not going to happen, at least not right away. So yeah, even when Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out, that's not going to destroy the Switch 2. That's not going to stop the Switch 2. You're not going to see people, like, refuse to buy Switch 2s because of Grand Theft Auto 6. And that's just something that, like, people are going to have to accept. At this point, I think most people are going to own one of the other competing brands and a Switch. And I think traditionally people had this idea that, like, the Nintendo platform was the side console, and, like, the PlayStation or the Xbox was the primary one. I think this generation is going to be the beginning of Nintendo consoles being seen as the primary. And a big reason for that is simply because Nintendo consoles are simply so much better at actually playing video games. You're going to see the industry glaze Grand Theft Auto 6. They're going to call it the biggest thing in gaming ever. They're probably going to give Game of the Year to Mixtape, but Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be hyped up too. They're going to do everything they possibly can to sell Grand Theft Auto 6 as this, like, industry standard, as this big deal, as this cultural phenomenon. But I think this very well may be the first Grand Theft Auto release where the magic has worn off a little bit. Because it took so long to come out, and because there won't be that much in the game. It's getting mogged by other better Nintendo open world games. There's more competition now. Like, there's no reason to think that Grand Theft Auto is ever going to be particularly popular or successful. This kind of reminds me of the Star Wars prequels, in which, this massive cultural phenomenon franchise got these new film trilogy films made, and people went to go see it because they love the originals, and they love the universe, and they wanted them desperately to be good. But the fact was, they weren't good. And people have been coping about this for 20 years, actually almost 30. And the simple fact of the matter is that the Star Wars prequels are not good. They will never be good. They will never be good as the original trilogy, and people just need to get over that. We are still in that process for Grand Theft Auto 6, where this franchise is in clear decline. It clearly cannot compete. It is clearly not relevant. It's never going to be bigger than Pokemon, but the community desperately wants it to be the next big thing. The community wants to rally behind it in order to try and continue the illusion that Nintendo is on the verge of failing or going bankrupt, or just in general just failing. Okay. Like, Grand Theft Auto 6 is their absolute last shot at justifying the existence of PlayStation and Xbox as brands. So if this game fails the way Cyberpunk 2077 failed, there simply will not be any coming back from this. We're going to have to wait another 20 years for Grand Theft Auto 7, and in the meantime, Nintendo's going to put out, honestly, probably hundreds of games that are way better than Grand Theft Auto ever was. So this is going to be the industry trend going forward. This is going to be something that we see a lot of, is that the industry will keep glazing the Expedition 33s, the Baldo Gate 3s. They'll keep glazing, like, the Elden Rings. They'll keep glazing, like, the It Takes 2s and the Last of Us Part 2s, and, like, the Uncharted 4s and the Overwatches and the Witcher 3s. I'm sure a lot of them will glaze Witcher 4 and, like, Witcher Remake, even though nobody is excited for those games at all. Like, we're going to see the industry rally behind all of these random projects, only for them to kind of collapse and kneel before the almighty Nintendo. There is nothing the industry can possibly do to stop Nintendo's dominance in the gaming industry.